Well, hey guys, I am solo today. It is spring break. So Dr. Cody and I have been going live every week. But today it will just be me and me alone. But I want to talk about detoxifying your diet because something that I'm becoming more and more knowledgeable about and more aware of, not just in my own dietary choices, but in working with clients and seeing the impact that simple swaps can have on how our body is responding to, processing, benefiting from, and actually absorbing the nutrient density of the foods that we're eating. I'm really starting to buy in more and more to the quality over quantity conversation. Well, I shouldn't say over quantity. I mean, I look at them as equally important when it comes to body composition. You still have to have the right macro balance. You still have to have the right amount of calorie intake to calorie expenditure, depending on your goals, whether that's a surplus or a deficit. But just time and time again, have I seen people who are shifting away from the pre-made protein drinks and lunch meat and processed carbohydrates like packaged chips or even pre-made meals that are quote unquote healthy, that if they do some of their own meal prep where they're using a bit more whole food ingredients and they're just starting to move towards that spectrum. And I'm not suggesting that you have to be perfect at this. I'm going to eat a protein bar on Sunday morning between service and Sunday school because I don't have any other option and I'm not hungry when I get up. So believe me, I'm a realist. I know that you cannot necessarily always go to that full end of the spectrum where everything is completely whole food, untouched, one ingredient, nothing processed, no preservatives. Like, let's just find that space where we can start to make an intentional effort to move closer to some of those and not rely on convenience when it's not absolutely necessary. If you're buying a case of pre-made protein shakes for your house and you're grabbing one out of the fridge, my argument to that is put a scoop of protein powder in a blender bottle and throw some milk or water in it and walk out the door. Like, that's a 1 to 2 minute differential. And I know those are tasty, the core power drinks. They are good. I'm not going to lie, like from a pre-made, the muscle milks are nasty. Those premier protein shakes can't get behind. The core power tastes pretty good. But bottom line is it's never going to be the same as eating a whole food protein source. The powders still processed, minimally processed in some cases. But again, like, find your happy space. But here's what's happening. What I'm seeing is digestion disruption. So if you're somebody that has sensitive GI, like you grew up and you were constantly having tummy issues, or you've always kind of had a sensitive stomach to really heavy foods or just different foods, and you know that you kind of have to be careful on that. Like, if you're noticing constipation or you're noticing irritation of the bowel or you're noticing irregularity, look at how much of your food sources are coming from things that could fall into that highly processed category. And the way they categorize that, honestly, is just based on the ingredient list. And the longer it gets and the more chemical components in it and the more manufactured products that are making up that food source, the more processed it is. Shelf life can dictate, right? Even if you think about the lunch meat spectrum, if you go get deli meat where they slice it for you, boar's head, lower preservatives, no nitrates, etc., it goes bad a lot quicker than the Oscar Mayer deli meat on the shelf. So the shelf life dictates. That's what you can say about those pre-made shakes. Like, how long do those things last? I've never checked, but probably a while, right? canned soups, even tuna in a can is more processed than would be going and buying chicken breast, ground beef, fish, things again that are fresh and have less added ingredients in them. So, my challenge to you this week is, if you haven't been tracking your food, if that's just not something that you do on a regular basis, log your food for a couple days. Be as detailed and diligent as you can and look through it. Do an audit and check off all the things that are in a package, that are pre-made, that you eat out, that are more processed, and then make another little list or highlight a different color of whole foods, like an apple with your lunch, or eggs at breakfast, or I made a pork tenderloin for dinner. Those are whole food choices, right? Yogurts, again, they can ride on a spectrum. A plain yogurt or a yogurt with natural sweeteners, no added artificial sweeteners or added sugars, those are going to be less processed than like the little Chobani flips that have all the little goodies you put in and lots of added sugars to them. So you might have some. It's like if you do one of these food sensitivity tests, right? And you look at the green foods, like these are the foods you can just eat liberally. You don't have to worry about the amount or the frequency. And then you've kind of got your yellow foods where like you can eat these, but maybe moderate, maybe rotate every 72 hours to give your gut a break because you have a mild sensitivity. And then you got the red foods that are like, these are off the table. And again, I'm not necessarily advocating those tests because I don't know how accurate they are, but I'm just saying to categorize your processed level of your foods, maybe green, yellow, red, and then try and really focus mostly on the green category as much as you can and think about, are there things that I'm using that I could probably put a little bit more time and effort or just prioritize on a weekend or shop differently to where I could get some chicken breasts, throw them in the crock pot with some seasonings and some low sodium broth and let them cook on a Sunday and have chicken for the week instead of getting the Tyson pre-cooked grilled chicken strips. That to me is a fairly simple swap that takes the quality of the chicken that you're eating to a significantly higher level, right? If you're buying frozen meatballs that are processed and seasoned and pre-cooked, how hard is it to get a pound, 16 ounces of ground beef or ground turkey, throw in some seasonings, some breadcrumbs and an egg, and make 16 meatballs? You know, they're 1 ounce each. Throw them on a sheet pan and bake them, and then you've got them cooked off for the week. Fruit, instead of dried fruit, or instead of go-go squeeze or applesauce, or any number of things, even the pre-cut if it's not fresh. So I think that what is happening at a cellular level is because of the artificial sweeteners, because of the trans fats or the processed ingredients, the preservatives, the manufactured chemical products that are helping to create that shelf life, to helping to create the packaged, the ability for it to stay fresh, whatever it is they're putting in there. I'm not a food manufacturer, but that is making our body and our metabolism work so much harder to break through all the noise and get to the root value, nutritional value of that food product. And so then our body isn't able to metabolize, absorb, digest, move through the system the same as a naturally occurring food source. And so you might be seeing that, man, like I'm nailing my macros, or I'm really staying in my calorie ranges, or I feel like I'm making good choices, because Tyson grilled chicken is not necessarily a high calorie choice. It's protein, it's low fat, it's probably got minimal carbs, maybe a little just from the seasoning or however it's cooked. But again, it's the quality. And so you're looking at it through that lens of strictly numbers and macros. And you're right. But I think long term, just in terms of our longevity, our health, even just like the way that our internal systems, we're hearing a lot about the gut microbiome and all these things. And I do think the way our food is processed. Now, here's another reason I say that. I have so many clients that travel to Europe through the course of our work together, or even they just tell me stories of how they've been to Italy for an anniversary, or they visited their daughter in Spain while she was studying abroad. And they're coming back and they're saying, I slept like a baby. Now I was walking 20,000 steps a day, so that might have something to do with it. But like they just felt like everything, they were less inflamed. If they've had any kind of arthritis or joint issues, they're like, it was so much better when I was over there. And I didn't eat as much because the food was so much richer. And I didn't have to think about portion control as much because I was like legitimately savoring my food and I was full. And if I was drinking wine, I wasn't really having a hangover because it doesn't have the tannins in it. It's just so much more natural. And I do think there's some truth to that. And if we take that simple example and really broaden that lens to say, like, what else in the course of our day could be creating kind of that toxicity, and the things that we categorize as toxins in our body. Artificial sweeteners, because they are chemicals, they are a artificially manufactured source of sweetener that mimics sugar. So at the very least, moving to something that's a natural sweetener like monk fruit, stevia, honey, cane sugar, something that can move you more on that spectrum. Maybe you have to use less of it from a caloric standpoint, but it's a natural source of that sweetener. I think the other thing potentially that we could talk about is alcohol, also a toxic substance in our body. And I think that's one of the hardest things for people in today's social world, and where alcohol is so accessible and so much a part of eating out, celebration, socializing, vacationing. But you don't realize that you're literally killing cells every time you ingest alcohol. It does kill our cells, and they obviously regenerate, but it's like you're making your body rebuild every single time you go through that weekend process or that evening out. Processed foods are toxic to the body. Our body doesn't recognize them. They're not a natural source of food that our body is meant to be able to digest and process. So alcohol, artificial sweeteners, highly processed foods. You have to look at medication, over the counter and prescription medications. Those are foreign to our body. And while they probably do help certain symptoms, right, the reason that we're prescribed them or the reason that we choose them, they could be causing other potential side effects. I always see that. I'm like, oh, is it better to take this anti-inflammatory because I know I'm going to be dehydrated, or I'm not going to go to the bathroom for a couple of days, or I'm going to get insomnia when I have steroid injection, or I've had them in the past. I cannot sleep. So it's like I get relief here, but then I'm not sleeping for 2 or 3 days. I'm like, what's the trade-off here, folks? So that's the other thing to think about. Again, how much of that can your body handle? And then if you're in a situation where you're having to take prescription medication, plus you're eating highly processed foods, plus you're drinking alcohol, plus you're throwing a lot of artificial sweeteners into your day, either in your coffee or doing diet drinks, or even yogurts might have artificial sweeteners in them. Like if you look on the food label, almost anything you eat that has something sweet in it has some kind of sucralose or dextrose or aspartame, some kind of, so just try as much as you can to think about that. And when you do that audit, just pick a couple. Again, I'm not trying to make your life so difficult, because I've seen this over the years with people that find out that they're gluten intolerant, or they find out they have some kind of a food allergy, a true allergy, and they're having to go and look at food labels and just spend hours in the grocery scanning and making sure they're not going to have any nuts in their food, or they're not going to have any gluten, or they're not going to have any, whatever it is that they're trying to avoid. I don't want to make your life that difficult, but I do think it's worth experimentation, because if you do make some of those changes and you do notice some significant differences, it could be your skin. I've had clients that have little breakouts and things, and they realize, oh man, it was the whatever I was having. Caffeine is another potentially toxic substance in excess. So are you having lots of caffeine in the day? And how many of those can your body handle? And how much are you trying to ask of your body? And it's probably getting a little mad. It's getting a little ticked off. And so the reason it might not be responding to adjustments in diet and exercise the way that you would have hoped it would, again, it may not be lack of effort on your part. You might not need to be adding another workout session in the week. You may not need to be restricting calories more. You might just need to be enhancing the quality of the calories that you are consuming. And I think those are some things that we have ultimate control over for the most part. Now, when you're having to travel and eat out, I understand that. And again, that's why I'm saying, look at the low-hanging fruit, no pun intended. Look at the low-hanging fruit and say, all right, of these things, like, what am I just defaulting to that I could potentially make that adjustment and it wouldn't really disrupt the flow of my week too extremely? Or what would be the biggest impact maker, right? Like something you're doing every single day is going to make a much bigger impact than something that you're doing, like for myself, my example, like once a week I'm having a protein bar at church. I don't know that that's making that swap would make a significant difference in my process, my progress, my digestion, my overall health, because it's so minimal in the course of my week. The majority of my week, I eat nothing but whole foods. I can think of very few processed foods that I eat. So I don't know that that would make a huge difference for me, but I know some people are eating and drinking 1 and 2 bars and shakes a day, where I've seen, okay, let's just swap that one out. Let's just change that to hard-boiled eggs and an apple. That every single day over a week, that's a pretty significant shift and reduction in something that is highly processed to something that is very whole food, high fiber, nutrient dense, easy to absorb, easy to digest, and giving your body so much better quality. There's so much research to show that even with protein powders, there's a difference in how quickly and how effectively there's this anabolic window. There's a time window, and in certain protein powders are more bioavailable. They're more absorptive. They're more easy to digest on the stomach. And so you play with that spectrum and you notice, okay, like for me, that's going to make a much bigger difference. So I think if we can really think about some of that and do your homework. Again, some people are a lot more sensitive to certain types of sweeteners. Like I don't really like stevia that much, but I'm good with monk fruit. I'm really good with just some honey in my yogurt. And you need just like the smallest little bit of it to get the sweet that you're wanting, especially if you're going to put some fruit in it, or maybe even some granola or some nuts. It's like you're just wanting a little bit. And I think it's like when you go to a restaurant, you order a salad and you get the dressing on it. It's like I could have gotten away with a fourth of that. But once it's on there, you can't take it out. So if you start shopping to base level and you are in control of adding and doctoring up with the quality and the amounts of the things that you want to make it palatable, to make it enjoyable, because we do want to enjoy our food. But when something's already been created a certain way, you don't get to modify it. So that's when I say for people going out to eat, SOS. sauce on the side, because you can dictate, and you only might need a little bit of that to still really enjoy it and have enough of that flavor profile that you're looking for. So control the controllables, control the content and the quality, and then just see. And that's what, like I say about supplements and medication, it's like, do you notice a difference? People say, do you think I should be taking this supplement, that supplement? Do I need a multivitamin? And I'm taking all this battery stuff and omega-3s and turmeric and all this. And I'm like, do you feel different? They're like, well, I don't know. I'm like, well, I don't know that it's worth the cost then. If you're taking all that stuff and you don't notice a difference, like, why are we taking it? Unless labs had a specific deficiency, like vitamin D, and you need it, doctor has suggested it. I'm not going to take, I'm not going to say you shouldn't do that. But if you're just taking supplements to take them because you read online, like it's good to take this or that, but you aren't noticing a personal difference, then you probably don't need it. So same thing, if you clean out the pantry, you make those adjustments on the quality quantity shift, and you don't notice a difference, then maybe that's not something that's really impacting you at a digestive, hormonal, results oriented level. But my guess is if you were diligent to do that and you gave it some time and you started really focusing on less processed, more whole food, less of those toxic substances, the caffeine, the alcohol, the medication, the artificial sweeteners, the highly processed foods, like, you're going to feel so much better. So my challenge to you, and I'd love to hear from you. Message me, email me, workwithdrtiff.com. I would love to, if you do this experiment, I want to know how it goes, because I am suspicious that there's something to this and that we don't realize the impact that it's making on our body's ability to truly optimize composition, optimize mental, physical function, and those little swaps, even if not just over the top. Again, I'm not saying we have to go crazy on the other end of the granola spectrum, but let's just do a little bit and see what happens. All right, I'll see y'all next week.